Pluto's a dwarf planet. It is maybe one of the most misunderstood, difficult energies to grasp, but maybe one of the more powerful energies in our astrological system. And Pluto takes on a major role in the astrology of 2022 and 2023 and 2024, as we have the Pluto return of the United States, and then Pluto goes back and forth over the boundary between Capricorn and Aquarius. So this is the Pluto video. What is Pluto, and how might we deploy it even in a natal chart analysis? So Pluto's an interesting energy, isn't it? It's a dwarf planet, it's a small object. There's many dwarf planets in the outer solar system. The genesis of this video is, again, another question. I got a question here from Jason Crayley. He says, thank you for your last weekly review. Thank you, Jason, for watching, and I appreciate this comment. He'd love to have a short video on Pluto. Jason, you know I don't refer to Pluto very much, but regardless, maybe do a video where how to add it to a chart, an interpretation, or a description of it in astrology. That's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to talk about the basic significations of Pluto, and then I will lay out some chart examples of seeing it in a natal chart. And again, what it'll do is it'll set up this whole conversation I want to have on this channel in the succeeding months. So let's start. What is Pluto? What does it mean in our astrological traditions? What does it signify? You know, a lot of times astrologers will see when a planet was discovered and then look at what's happening around the so-called real world. I'm not going to do that analysis in this video, and instead what I want to do is refer to some of the major writers we have that have written very well about what Pluto means. I'm going to go back to my library. First, I want to start with the archetypal cosmos, Kieran LeGrice, Rediscovering the Gods in Myth, Science, and Astrology, published by Flores Books. This is a relatively new book. Well, Kieran LeGrice provides this wonderful little it's part of a chart of the planets, and this is his entry for Pluto: the primal power of destruction and creation, empowerment and intensity, unconscious compulsion, evolution and transformation, instinctual energy, the underworld of the repressed unconscious, the natural cycle of birth, sex, death, and rebirth. And I think those are major themes that I've always considered Pluto to be about, which is the excavation of things that are operative at a deep level, that have a great power or force over the life, but that maybe at times they're latent or contained in a very hidden way. And so when they're triggered up, there's this kind of excavation and explosion out of the heavy-duty reality of the consciousness or of the selfhood. You know, you see myths about Pluto, what the god of the underworld, where it's a place where you go after you die, you go down under to this hidden place. These features of Pluto are very interesting. Hidden, death, rebirth, serious, heavy duty. And so thank you, Kieran LeGrice. I like his book, by the way, wonderful book. I recommend it, especially for modern astrological analysis, contemporary analysis of the modern planets and archetypal astrology, mythic astrology. Very excellent book. Okay, next writer I want to go to, Healing the Soul. This is the title of the book, Pluto, Uranus, and Lunar Nodes by Mark Jones, maybe my favorite contemporary astrologer. He's excellent. If you ever want to study consulting skills, go to Mark Jones's course. I've taken it. I love that course. So Mark Jones, he's an evolutionary astrologer. He says that from its Greek association to Hades and the underworld, just what I was talking about, Pluto represents the idea of hidden riches and treasure. It's the depths, it's these hidden features of life. And he says here we identify the source of these riches in each chart, and Pluto relates to each soul's unconscious security needs. So he's focused on, again, life and death. This is security needs, things that are hidden or unconscious. And I like that Mark Jones brings in riches or treasures, because sometimes these driving forces that we don't have access to, once they're unearthed, we really do have a unique power, because we've been given access to the kind of true nature of how things are functioning. All right, the next author I want to look at, Stephen Arroyo. This book is very popular. If you've ever gone to a used bookstore in America, there's many. This book will likely be in those piles. I've seen it everywhere. I've seen so many copies of this book as I've traveled through America. Astrology, Karma, and Transformation, The Inner Dimensions of the Birth Chart by Stephen Arroyo. I love that beautiful cover of the butterfly wings. But Arroyo is focused on Pluto always symbolizes a form of extremely concentrated power, and the power is so intensely concentrated that the physical shape is irrelevant. He gives the example of the atomic bomb is usually considered to be Plutonian, because it's a tiny object like an atom, and then the amount of energy released is so great. And that atomic test and some of the atomic physics was developed when Pluto was discovered. So this is one of the reasons why astrologers will attach Pluto to this theme of extremely concentrated power. But it fits with what we've already been describing, something that's hidden, unconscious, small, and it has great power, right? Security needs or death and rebirth. So these are kind of the major ways that I would think about Pluto. And so if we think about in our current moment, right, the American Pluto return, there are things that are hidden parts of the unconscious, of the collective, that are now bursting forth. You might think about social inequity, the structure of society, the monetary system, all of that's in play for complete upheaval. America will have to discover its truest essence and give it a chance to sort of burst forth and reinvent it. I plan to do a whole video of, America and its rebirth or something like that. You think about the Pluto and Aquarius, right? Concentrated power, the unseen but driving forces of reality. This Aquarian reality we've entered into, starting with Jupiter and Saturn's conjunction, right, in Aquarius, kicking off this age of air with Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions. Aquarius is technology, biotechnology, medicalization, all sorts of information technology. As Pluto comes there, I think it's pretty clear we'll have to face this confrontation with with our humanity and how it's being transformed by technology as a major theme of Pluto and Aquarius. But that's not this video. What I want to do now is shift, and I want to talk about natal chart examples. Sometimes the best way to understand an energy of a planet is find a nativity and find this planet either on the ascendant or the midheaven, the two maybe most sensitive points in a chart. And I've found several examples here. All of them are AA times, so we can rely maybe more strongly on these being good birth times because they come from a birth record. So let's dive in. I'm going to start with some examples from the ascendant, and then I'm going to shift with some examples from Pluto being with the midheaven. First, Gavin Newsom, governor of California, current governor of California. He was born with Pluto in Virgo in the same degree of his ascendant, only, 9 degree minutes off of his ascendant. The thing about Gavin Newsom is that he was born into a very wealthy family, or at least a network of wealth, because his father was the attorney for J. Paul Getty, the richest oilman of his day. And you can read about the history of Gavin Newsom. So some of this may be hidden. I think this is part of the Plutonic. It's not often led when there's descriptions of him, this whole part of his past and his family's past, right? It's very Plutonic. It's concentrated power, right? Networks of wealth in California. It's part of his identity and essence. And sometimes the ascendant, we can think about the early parts of our lives. That's all contained in Pluto being on Gavin Newsom's ascendant. You see here Brave News, the surprising Newsom, Pelosi, and Harris ties with Getty Oil. He's a career public servant and multimillionaire. A lot of times people will also delineate Pluto as being wealth. Bill Gates has a Pluto-Jupiter conjunction. Here's some more articles. 8 elite San Francisco families funded his campaign, but it goes all the way back to his father. This is just a fact, right? It's a hidden part of the really contained power of his story in his early life, and something he's born into, right? That's the ascendant. You're born into these conditions. Next chart. Omarosa Manigault, who came to fame with Donald Trump. I think she worked in Donald Trump's campaign, but she was on the show The Apprentice. Omarosa, I think she won The Apprentice. She's got Pluto in the exact same degree as her ascendant, only a few degree minutes separate them in early Libra. Think about Omarosa again, and what I'm focused here on the ascendant is the early life, and she was born in Youngstown, Ohio. Her father was murdered when she was 7 years old. Heavy duty, and you see this a lot with Pluto, is the loss of a parent. The thing about a loss of a parent is that it marks one for life often. It creates deep unconscious issues around attachment. I don't know about her story and her own personal struggles with this, but it's the ascendant, the first part of life, the Plutonic. Remember Kieran LeGrice, life and death, right? So she was confronted with death as a major theme very young. Pluto on the ascendant. And there's one more example of Pluto on the ascendant, Freddie Prinze Jr., who has Pluto not in the same degree, but with less than 10 degree minutes from his ascendant. Freddie Prinze Jr. is another example of being confronted with death at an early age. So less than a year after he was born, his father died from suicide, from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. You can already see, talking about Pluto, and we're going right to heavy issues, very serious life issues, the things that we really don't like to talk about at a dinner party, right? Politics, wealth, suicide. This is Plutonic. That's the nature of going into the Plutonic energy. You have to go to these difficult topics. It's the deep, powerful things we all carry around in our unconscious. So Freddie Prinze Jr. then, you can see how Plutonic this was for him, being born in that Plutonic energetic. So now I'm going to shift to two charts that have Pluto right in the midheaven degree, right with the midheaven degree. I'm going to start with a serious, heavy Plutonic one, and then we'll maybe have a lighter one, though still very Plutonic to close the video. But this is a guy, Kurt Waldheim. Kurt Waldheim is an Austrian. So Kurt Waldheim was the Secretary General of the United Nations and then the President of Austria. And so he had this political power, Pluto right on the midheaven. So that's Plutonic, right? But the thing that happened was it was discovered after he gained this political power that basically there was Nazi war crimes maybe associated with Kurt Waldheim, and it was a huge controversy. And so again, that hidden power that's latent and unconscious, and then it emerges to define his career, which is what the midheaven point is. It's how we're seen by the world, our action in the world. He couldn't escape the very Plutonic part of his past, which was him being associated with the Nazi regime. But it's certainly heavy duty and Plutonic, without a doubt, to have a past come back and emerge. But that being a core part of someone's history, core in the sense it's part of the core narrative of our modern moment, right? World War II is the defining kind of umbrella of significations that we still live in. And then the final chart, this one's a little bit more fun. It's certainly one that I'm enjoying talking about. And this is the chart of Prince the musician. Prince has Pluto in the anaretic degree of Leo, right with his midheaven in the anaretic degree of Leo. And the sun is in his 8th house of assets, right, of shared assets. I think Prince's Pluto midheaven conjunction manifests pretty clearly because there was a dispute with his record label over money, over his recordings and over the release schedule of his recordings. And Prince, instead of abiding by those contracts, he decided to represent himself as just a symbol, as a sigil effectively. And we know with sigil magic, these sigils hold contained power, right? They're small, but they have great force and power. And he became known by this symbol. He had guitars with this symbol. And it was about that money dispute. And it was related to how he presented himself in the world. And so this very Plutonic turn fights over power, fights over money, fights over contracts, fights over things that are very powerful and important, but maybe not always at the forefront. Plutonic themes pushed Prince into a very Plutonic choice, which was to represent with this sigil. And so it's a perfect example of how Pluto might create a rebirth of someone, or rebirth someone's career out of the necessity of these kind of primal security needs. Wonderful chart example for Pluto. So in your chart, check where Pluto is. Most people are not going to have it right on the ascendant or midheaven. My advice to you would be to just explore house topics. If you want to go there, think about the first house, what it means, and if you have Pluto there, how might these Plutonic energies, these themes we've seen in these chart examples, themes we've seen in astrologers' texts when they write about Pluto, how might those themes apply to that house topic? Pluto in the first, maybe there's someone who's dealing with heavy-duty, serious life themes. Pluto in the 7th house, maybe it's been with, sexual or relational connection that you've explored the depths of selfhood or life and death and rebirth. Maybe a tantric practice or a spiritualized, relational practice. And so you can just go through all the houses and explore. I'm more interested in it when it's close to a point, like the ascendant or the midheaven, or close to a planet. And then it would blend with that planet, which then rules houses. So that would be maybe the third way. If Pluto's right next to your Mars, what houses does your Mars rule? And that will bring a Plutonic theme into those house topics. So this is Pluto. Use it. Think about it. And I think we'll all need to be contemplating it much more as we get into the second half of this year and into the next couple of years.